Today's webinar regarding StrataLogica is going to be super exciting. I know you guys are going to love this one. We've got Miss Melissa Knowles with us, and if there's anybody that's passionate about using StrataLogica, it's Melissa. She uses it every day, and she uses it with K4 students. Melissa, it is such a pleasure to have you online with us again tonight or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So glad to have you. And it looks like we have participants from various parts of the country this afternoon. It's always exciting to see also. So Melissa, just to let everybody know, if they want to talk to you or I, they're going to use the chat feature on the right-hand side of their screen. And other than that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you get us started looking at student-centered activities. So thanks, Melissa. We're looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. Yes, I work with K4 students in the library, and I have taught several grade levels. I've even worked in junior high library. So I've had a lot of experience with students, and honestly, I keep growing and changing. So student-centered activities with StrataLogica are easily implemented. I love StrataLogica because it allows the students to find their place in the world. They're not just talking about it, they see it. They see how far they are away from these areas. They can see different parts based on the map features, climate, population, elevation, so many things through the map. And by spring, we sometimes have run out of engaging ways. It's a lot harder to grab our kids. And so student-centered activities are a great thing to do in the springtime and a great way to continue learning with children and bring them to the next level based on what they enjoy. With StrataLogica, students go, as we said, anywhere in the world and to all the places that the information they're working with is located in. So let's quickly take a look at student-centered learning. And I'm going to go fairly quickly through this so we can get to the StrataLogica applications so your ideas can start brewing and forming. Student-centered learning has been around a long time, and it basically allows students' choice in directing their learning. They're then able to follow things that they're interested in. The teacher still assists and is still there. It's not something where you don't need a teacher. You're just sitting there and letting the kids work. Absolutely not. I'm constantly walking around, pulled from table to table to work and help. The difference is students have some input in their choices and what they do. So this type of learning has really allowed me to learn about my students and develop better relationships with them and really get to know the things they're interested in and the things that they're good at, the things they may need some work on, the things they want to know more about, and direct them in those ways so they can find themselves as a learner. And so that I can not only just as a librarian put information in their hands, but allow them to then discover who they are and how they learn best, and maybe some interest that they didn't even know they had. So I really enjoy working with this. Some companies like Google are even now allowing employees a creative time to explore passions and ideas. And this doesn't have to be complete freedom, as we're going to look. My current experience in the library right now has been using different types of technology. So through the month of March, the students that come to the library practice technologies such as 3D printing, video game design, powered Lego construction, and virtual and augmented reality. Next month, they're going to choose which technology they want to know more about. They're also going to research the history of that technology and maybe some specific interests that they have with that technology and use StrataLogica that way. They can embed their own photos and things that they've done, but right now, like I said, it has been just the experience with the technology. So I'm really excited to get into the meat of the project as we keep going. So this particular Lego unit, I was a little nervous working with because of the pieces. I've had it for over a year. No one has used it until now. And I actually brought this all the way down to first graders with some strategic planning as far as how many pieces they can have out at one time and organization, pictures. It has really been an easy transition into using this. And, I'm kind of sad now that I haven't done it before. So I think the kids would really have enjoyed it. I'm also able to hit so many objectives with this project. So this is the Bloxels app. They're creating a video game, and you can see first grade students, my kindergartners just flourished with this. There wasn't a grade level that couldn't do it. It's amazing when you're learning about your students how you see, oh, well, maybe they could do it, and maybe I shouldn't have questioned that. So, going from no one using it, my plan was just fourth grade, to now everyone is using it, most of the technologies. Um, I have really changed, and I'll tell you what, it has been a great experience, and I hope you hear that um, in the webinar today. So when you're doing student-centered learning, you've got to change a little bit and adapt, and sometimes it is hard for both the teacher and the student to lessen control, and for the student to gain control and to know what to do with it. So you are definitely a facilitator, a co-learner constantly. I'm learning from the students, whether I think I know a lot about it or nothing about it. I continuously learn from them every time they pick up the technology. And then I'm also a guide. I want to make sure they stay on track, and I want to make sure that they're assessing themselves and setting goals and talking with each other and all of those things. So lots of questioning and just getting the students to think about what they're doing and why. So then the students have to make decisions, and their decisions are about what and how, and then the path of their learning. So this can start very small, depending on your comfort zone. It could be just a few choices with how they present or what type of research they look for. Or it can be as freeing as something that we're doing where they're going to get to actually choose their path with objectives in mind. So allowing students to then choose definitely gives them ownership of their learning, and it becomes a lot more meaningful. And you're going to see in some of the activities that I've got for you tonight in StrataLogica, it is incredibly meaningful because in the projects they can put themselves. So I really love that, and the choices are there, and how they do it is their decision and their choice. And so I really think that this has been eye-opening for me and for my students as learners. When you're planning your student-centered activities, think about the concepts you're trying to teach. What do you want them to learn? How are you going to know if they've learned the concept? And this is what I kind of like to put on the students. And then determine which activity or activities will best teach that concept. So number 2 and 3 are biggies for me, but you could simply start with 3 and then work back. And you may even end them working through the activity. Things that they do and things that they say and ideas that they have will help lead you toward other ideas, to know that the concept has been learned, to know that they know what they're talking about. And through StrataLogica, you're going to be able to present their learning in very unique ways. So student conferences are incredibly important. I can't meet individually because I only have 40 minutes once a week, but I would suggest that making a plan with the students of the activity, how they're showing, all those things we just talked about in planning, makes the student feel incredibly important. Even if you're completely guiding them as they're making their decisions and they're agreeing with you, it really gives the student a feeling that I chose this, or we did it together. It wasn't just you telling me what to do. So it's great, especially for students that have maybe a little oppositional defiance and maybe even some behavior issues. This really gives them a little bit of control And that sometimes can make a world of difference. So definitely guide and model students as they work. Use open-ended questions that the students can't just pull one answer, or they may have an answer and then decide through their learning it completely changed. Don't forget to have the students evaluate their progress. Peer progress monitoring is also very important. For the students to see, what other people think and maybe some of their ideas. They don't have to use them, but they're there for them. And keep the students going forward that way in the right direction. So they're not having to go back way far to revamp something. So progress and how they're doing is important to keep track of. Also, goal setting. Don't forget at the beginning when you're planning with the students to set a goal. What do I want to get from this? What do I want to know? And it may, you may even could have your objectives there, but then have a student goal that's separate. And then make sure, please, we're really good at our school about goal setting, but we're not always so great about going back and evaluating and checking if that goal was met. Please take the time to talk with the student or have them even do a quick evaluation on their own of whether they met that goal. Did they get what they wanted? Did they get something that completely surprised them? What do they want to do now? Where do they want to take it now? And why StrataLogica? How does this GLOBE program, mapping program, help with student-centered learning? Well, once again, it puts the students' learning into the real world. It takes these big concepts and makes them more real for the students in so many ways. The resources are directly on the map where it happened, so they can get their learning right where it happened. And you've got presentation and custom views that are interactive and can be easily student directed. And they're so easy to pick up. I mean, user friendly is a very key feature of StrataLogica. So the project option also allows students to collaborate together and communicate while working in real time, but they're working on their own device. And when you're in a time crunch situation, having just 40 minutes, it's really important for me for the students to be able to work the entire time, but still talk with each other and still offer suggestions and see what the other group members are doing. And StrataLogica in the project offers that. Also, you've got other resources through StrataLogica: atlases, charts, historical maps, and there's so many overlays that you can put over the globe, so many different types of maps that really make it incredibly versatile for any lesson. So now let's talk about a few ideas that I have of ways to use student-centered learning easily in StrataLogica. So hopefully, if you have any questions currently about student-centered learning, these examples will help answer some of them. And you can see you're probably doing a lot of this stuff. You may not call it student-centered learning, but I want you to see how you can implement it into StrataLogica. So students will research their family's ancestry. You could go back as far as you want, city, state, country, depending on the student or depending on what you're looking for in your objectives. Then analyze a time period or historical event, or maybe even a political conflict surrounding the place at that time or even at another time in history. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the time they left. But you could look at political conflicts or things that happened that may have caused immigration. It may not have necessarily applied to their family, but to others that may have immigrated. So I think it's really neat to see where in the world your family came from and where they've ended up, and then maybe even how they've spread. You could do a whole family tree with StrataLogica. So the question at the bottom, is this a meaningful real-world learning experience? Absolutely. They have stock in this activity because it has to do with them. But they're also learning about a time period. So let's look at just an example that I created. So here is a presentation in StrataLogica. My grandparents came from Germany. They their family did not appreciate what was going on in Germany, so they decided that they would leave during this time. So I've added a pin, and this pin is going to talk through some of the beginning history of the Second World War. So you can see here a short video. You could even have the student make it interactive by asking questions or having them do something with the video after that. Maybe even have the student relate what was happening to their family. And what would you have done? Did you agree with what your family did? Those sort of higher level activities or higher level DOKs. Okay, and so I've also then added when my family left Germany, they came to Michigan and Benton Harbor. And at this time period, the Axis powers um, are gaining momentum in Germany, but they've settled now in Michigan. But they still have family in Germany, so you could have the students talk about that. Maybe the grandparents write a letter to the family over there talking about what is happening and what they're hearing and asking how they're doing. Maybe you even go to Michigan. Why did so many Germans settle in Michigan and Wisconsin? So they could research that. Why did they choose this area? So there's tons of opportunities to take the history somewhere. And luckily, history has happened everywhere, so it'd be easily adaptable. And then what a great sharing for students. I could have embedded photos of my family. I could have had maybe a video or audio recording of my grandmother talking about what it was like to travel and what it felt like. Um, many ideas. They were actually very young at this time. So I don't know that they would remember, but she may remember her mom talking about it. So that would be even some great source information firsthand. So tons of ways where the student could then just decide how are they going to show that they know what's happening in the world during this time. How are they going to represent that? And it could be done in a lot of ways. So you can see that in StrataLogica, you've got a lot of options here. Another idea that I had was History My Way. So I love talking to students about their passions and what they're interested in. I constantly do it with books. What was the last book that you enjoyed? What type of things do you like? When I'm trying to help them discover what literature they would enjoy next. So students could choose a topic that they're passionate about or that they want to know more about. Sports has been popular, art, technology, maybe a specific person, a place, lots of options, just whatever the student enjoys. Then they can research the history of that passion. You can put this into historical context by like sports. Sports went through racial integration, gender conflict, art. How does art reflect history? Recently, I made a trip to Puerto Rico, and the very famous Puerto Rico flag that's painted on the door, my sister went back and said that it was painted black as a statement for how they don't agree with what the government is doing. The artist doesn't agree with the government and some things that they're doing. So I think that's an amazing way to show a peaceful statement, but then the students could research what is going on in the government that people aren't liking. What are all the sides? And they can really take it and go. And it just started with art, something they're interested in. Music and dance during the Depression is another idea. I like to take this a little further and discover the ways that people in that time period were frugal and made do with very little. Just from TV and things, I've learned a lot about like watering down milk and eating certain foods that were cheaper that could last a long time. They could even plan a week. How would they live during that time period? I mean, people were in devastation. They took in roommates. They sent their children to live with other people. I saw a picture on the internet recently that had a picture of a lady who has said children for sale, 4 children, inquire within. So, I mean, what makes people go to these dire straits during this time period? So they could really do a lot of research with that. So I decided to do a custom view with some information about the depression. And I've added 2 pins, entertainment during the depression, which is a video and has some text under it so the student can write. They can do bring in a lot of English and literature, or sorry, literary standards into that. You can just see through the budget, they could bring in math. I mean, very interdisciplinary for this. Researching videos would be a great way. And then what was the Great Depression? So I've got a photo here that I've put in and some text. And then I also did source. So the students can get used to adding in source information and showing a bibliography in their StrataLogica. So just trying to make sure that the students are hitting all the objectives and using it in context so that it makes sense and it's real. So I really like this particular project because I feel like the student could really go so many ways with it, yet they're still meeting the objectives, even though they may do it differently. And then we all know that presenting and teaching someone else is an amazing way to show that you've really learned something. So being able to show and teach someone else. And you can easily do that through StrataLogica. It doesn't even have to take time, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a little bit. And then in their voice. As you can tell, I love interviews, biographies, personal accounts of historical events. And it doesn't have to just be in a project like this. You can include this in anything that you can find in any historical event, or even meeting of penguins, if you do a penguin migration and talk about Antarctica and Southern Africa and South America. You could do a lot with that, even by talking with a marine biologist and getting a video that way. So it's a great way, again, to meet so many objectives. I love the idea of embedding videos of the actual interview that they do. If they're not able to interview an actual person, they could do a mock interview, which I think actually may involve even more learning, because they're then having to become that person and decide how they would talk and what they would say and how they would answer things. So a lot of deep, high-level thinking is going on there. So they can video that and embed it into StrataLogica. So you just record it with whatever device you have. So many devices record it now. Upload it to YouTube. You can make it even private, and then just embed it straight into your show. Using a project style with this would be excellent for adding students to the group. So when you add students to the group, they're then allowed to add notes. So they can reflect on the person's life, maybe be amazed at something, show their thinking, and then add questions for that person. I think this would be a really neat idea. You know how in college classes we have to respond to 2 people and add in our statement to a question. Well, the students could do this too. Maybe they have to ask questions to 3 students in the class about that person's life. Well, then the project owner has to research, decide what the person would say, how they would respond, and then respond to the fellow student. So I think you could get some really neat discussions with this, and some great questioning, and some really understanding of that person or account. I also wanted to show you when you do share with students. So if you put students in a group, you assign them a project or a presentation or a custom view. So you can see when the student logs in, they'll see under messages what was shared. Here you can see that I've actually shared 2 things with this particular person, including founding father Ben Franklin, which is the In Their Voice project that I assigned. So when you select the 3 dots with the 3 lines, you get 2 options, view and delete. Now when I click view, it opens into maps. I still have to go to the gallery and open the project, but it automatically, when I share it, it saves it into their gallery. So that's nice and easy. So I've got a project and I'm the teacher, Melissa Knowles, although in this I'm kind of a student, acting as a student because I did it under my login. But as a teacher, you're more than welcome to add in things to the learning, maybe questions or anything that you would normally give to the students. Maybe they're not going far enough and you want them to add in some other things, and you could do that through a pin directly in StrataLogica. But you've got all your people on the right that have been assigned or sent this project: Amelia, Albert, and Anne. So the eyeballs here are something that I love. No longer do you have collaborative groups where one person does all the work. When you select, when I unchecked my eyeball, I took away what I had done. So all I see, and Amelia's the only one that's contributed so far to this, so I didn't unselect the other two. But I could have, and nothing would have changed because they haven't done anything. I can see exactly what each person has contributed by selecting and deselecting the eye. So you know exactly the amount of effort each person put in. So I really like this feature. You're not having to stand over or do evaluations at the end, where I always felt like I didn't want to talk bad about anybody and it was really hard. And and you have students like that. So, you know, the evaluations at the end don't always work, or you could be like my daughter who does it's easier to just do the whole thing and just be done with it. This takes that away. Each person is having to contribute. So I really like this feature. Now, in the upper part, as one of the options, you can see the piece of paper. That means that a note has been added. So every person that logs in will see that note. So you can see that I wrote to Amelia, I found a great resource for your section on the electricity contribution. So then Amelia can respond. Thanks, Melissa. We may want to shorten the biography to stay in our time limit. So students could really use this to share, to critique, to offer suggestions. And it's a great way. Everyone will see it. It's right there. So it's a great way for students to collaborate, yet they're still working. But they're also able to see what each person has contributed. So it may be that in electricity, part of my biography was in her sharing, so I may want to take that out. You know, you can imagine what the kids thinking is going to go through when they see. They may even see, well, these people are done and I haven't done anything. I need to get on it. So it could even be a motivator. And then you as a teacher can offer feedback. I see you haven't done anything. Is there any way I can help you? What can I do to make this easier for you or to get you on board? So just lots of ways to bring the learning while they're working for everyone. Another thing they can do, which is awesome, is work at home or on a different device. It doesn't have to be limited to that classroom time period. If they're sick, they could still contribute. I love the opportunities that StrataLogica gives you for your students' projects and learning. Now I have another idea for you. Dream trip. Spring break's coming up, so I guess that's probably why I thought of trips and budgeting. So the students could research places to visit. So this is a great thinking activity. What do I want? Do I want to go to someplace quiet that's in the mountains? What kind of places do I like? Maybe I want to go someplace I've never been before. Maybe I want to go someplace historical. So they can have a budget, and you can do this tons of different ways of what they can spend on the trip. So they could then map where they stay, where they can eat, the places they want to visit, how much it would cost, and do an entire experience without having to actually go there. They can even create things such as brochures and embed it into their project. They can also create a video. What about doing a travel show video where the student has researched the place and they're saying this is the budget, and they present the place as um, a travel show where they're trying to get people to go there. So I thought that would be a really fun way to showcase and to focus, to show the learning in a awesome way. Then you could even at the end have students vote to see which place they would want to go to the most. Maybe they change from their place to another place based on the person's video or brochure. So that would be a really interesting way to see, to have students show their learning, but still have a lot of fun with it and have a lot of decisions that they can make um, according to your comfortability and the students' uh, security in the project. Another option could be to do it like on a game show when someone wins a prize. You know, you could even do it in that type of video. So I really like this. It's also a great way to then raise the DOK level and raise the rigor by having then students analyze, what are you going to gain from this trip? What do you expect to get from it? They may even, once they visit the place, they may even change their mind. So their analysis could even be, you know, I thought I wanted to go here, but this is really not somewhere that I am interested in anymore. I saw how much traffic there was, or how many people, or how expensive it was. You know, lots of thinking can go into this, but you can gain some real insight and have the students uh, deeply think about why they're doing something. And of course, I had to talk about literature, book travels. I wish I had thought about this during our book study on The One and Only Ivan, based on a real gorilla. Um, I probably would have done it a little bit differently than this, but I want to share just this option with you. So maybe if you're doing a reading group, you could try this. What I was thinking was I would create a custom view or a presentation, depending on if you were worried about how cluttered it could possibly get. Maybe each person could have their own page in the presentation. Or you could do it in a custom view project type way. So what I would do is have the students, rather than sharing their thinking on sticky notes, is to put questions or comments or things that they're thinking directly into StrataLogica through text. And I think this would be a great way to show the students thinking. Everyone else can see their thinking and can gain from that, but at home while they're reading it right away, they could get on there and plug in their thoughts. Maybe they didn't know a word and they want to know the definition. Or what did you think about this part? Do you think we should have animals in captivity now? Is it better if the animals are taken care of, or is it still not right? You can do a lot of thinking straight through StrataLogica, because with my book club, I only had 20 minutes during their lunchtime. So this would be a great way to get a lot more meat out of my book club rather than just simply sharing through the club. I think that would be a fun, interesting way. Then you could even go and research where gorillas came from, how different the environment Ivan was in now as where he originated. So travel through a book. As the students read, they can add a pin to show where the characters travel. They could include summaries, illustrations, a video recording of that part of the book, and then read another chapter. So you could do a chapter by chapter pin. You could do a beginning, middle, end pin. You could bring in all kinds of different literary elements. You could even have them travel through genres, and on their map, they put a pin where that character was, but they discussed the genre, the book, what happened in the book, and what genre it was. And were they interested in that genre? What did they think? What parts were interesting? Tons of ideas where you could go with it. And here's another idea. So for this example, I found a lesson that someone had already created and I adapted it to StrataLogica. The Watsons go to Birmingham. This is actually a prelude to the book. The students need to build background. I know a lot of times our fourth graders read this book and they don't know a whole lot about 1960s. So it's important that they have an understanding before they can really empathize and get into the characters in the story. So on this slide, I've got 5 slides in this presentation. On this slide, you can see 1963, and that's going to open to just different events that happened during that time period. Now, when they go to the rest stop, they get an activity. Choose 2 of those events to research. Record 3 newly learned facts about each event, and then remember to cite your work. One other amazing thing about StrataLogica is you could share this presentation with the students, and they could answer the questions directly into StrataLogica, share it with you or other students for peer ideas or response, and it can happen straight in StrataLogica. So the next slide is going to take us to a video about Birmingham and the Civil Rights Movement. Then I'm going to ask the students to listen, describe the 3 ways that students and children work to promote civil rights. Children. So that's really going to be applicable to the students. And then what consequences did they face? And then you can bring in, would you make these same choices knowing the consequences that were going to happen, or knowing something was potentially going to be a negative based on your actions? So I think that'd be a great, thoughtful activity for the students to do. So then at rest stop 3, can you think of examples of racism in our country today? Write them down for our class discussion. So then we can discuss this. Students are shocked and awed when they hear about the Holocaust and when they hear about how people were treated. But they may not be looking today at how some of those things are still happening. So there's a lot of good discussions that can go in with that, and you can gain a lot of insight into where the students are and where you may need to go with their learning about racism or about current events, and how to spot it, maybe things you can do in the classroom. So that was an idea for Rest Stop 3. Rest Stop 4 has 2 bonus pins. So for Rest Stop 4, I've added in a primary source article from a newspaper about the 16th Street church bombing that happened. Below, there are links to articles that they can read about the bombing. So I think this would be a great way for students to use primary source documents to gain insight, historical insight. But I've also added, there was a video on YouTube of a survivor's story, one of the children that was in the church at the time and her experience. I thought that'd be a really neat firsthand account. Do your thoughts change? What do you think? Why would these people do this? Tons of great questions that you can then pose, turn and talk, small group, or class discussion, or even just commenting directly in StrataLogica. The last pin, are we there yet? We had to add that in. That's an interview with the author. So I thought that would be neat about, why he wrote the book and his experiences before we get to our final destination in slide 5. So they've reached the destination, and now they're ready to begin reading the Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. So I love this activity because you're building knowledge. So often, I know in our 4th grade, they throw them into Alabama history when they really have no grasp of history. So this would be also a great thing to do, even if you intended to do the Watsons Go to Birmingham as a read aloud. You could still go through these activities with your students before to get them ready. And other books fit easily into an activity like this, or one of the others that we talked about. StrataLogica gives you opportunities to share your presentation. So you can see Save Presentation and Save Presentation As. Then you have your Send Presentation, and that's where I like, they can send it through, send the presentation to someone else in the class or the group. So that's really neat. And then you can see Has Been Sent To. So you can see exactly who has had this presentation sent to them. So you may even have the students pick one person to send it to for helpful hints or notes, and then maybe 2 random people. You can do it lots of ways, but I really like that, and I like the fact that it says has been sent to, so you can see exactly who. You don't have to just assume or not know, or maybe the student says, well, I didn't get it. Well, it's been sent to you. Let's figure out what's going on. Then you have your add note button right there, and then share. If you do any sort of online digital portfolio for students, this would be a great way to share their learning. So you can share through Facebook, Twitter, and just allow the students to express their learning out. Maybe even a student that was absent or has been sick or homebound or went on vacation, they could then go and access these presentations, whether you send it to them or share it, so that they don't miss learning. So it's a great way to keep students engaged and make them feel a part also. I really love that. StrataLogica does not limit you in how students gain feedback. There's so many options for students to share with the world, share with the class, share with the school, share with a PAL group in another state, just tons of options for that. And StrataLogica Genius Hour. I am always amazed when I allow students to choose their own learning. This has really opened my eyes. It's not as scary as I thought and anticipated. It has really changed the way I think, and I will definitely continue doing this for my students. The strengths are shown, and some students, in this failure-free environment, just blossom. And they realize they can do so much more than they thought. I think myself as a student would have really appreciated this, because I would have been able to realize at a younger age that I am good at a lot of different things and I can do a lot of different things. Maybe I've developed some more understanding of myself at a younger age. There's so many opportunities to challenge students with student-centered learning in StrataLogica, and it just feels different. It's a different vibe in the class when the students are sharing and they're feeling like they have choices that they can make. You're still in control, and they still come to you to ask and to bounce ideas off of you, but it's just a different type of a relationship, and I just really love it. Genius Hour is easy to add to your week, and it can be your bridge into student-centered learning. It could be your first step. So maybe rather than doing free time, even if you just did it once in a while, maybe not every week, just whatever you're comfortable with, but it really is free time because the students get to choose. So on Friday, during their hour or their time that they can chase their passions, students use StrataLogica and present. I do have certain requirements. I think I skipped ahead a little bit. I do have certain requirements. I do want them to research something, create something, present something. So StrataLogica is a great presentation tool that's quick because maybe you don't always have time to present everything. We used to go in number order. So we would go maybe 1 through 5 that day, and then number 6 gets written on the board, and the next Friday we start at 6. But they could still share their learning through StrataLogica, still get feedback, still ask questions, and still have something they have done. So I really appreciate that, and I feel like this would be an excellent opportunity if you're not sure about student-centered learning yet, maybe how it would look in your classroom. Genius Hour would be an easy way. A lot of us already are doing something similar to a free time activity. So it's a great, true collaboration. During student-centered learning, I see more discussion and more getting help from people than I see in anything else, especially if they're doing a seat activity. They'll ask each other, oh, how did you do this? And sometimes it's even just a comment, almost even to themselves. And then I'll hear someone 3 seats down pipe up and say, oh, this is what I did. It's been amazing. When we started this, there was a group of boys that just couldn't work together. I had one that just was not going to work with those boys. I don't know why. This week, actually, today, they all work together. They are seeing each other differently too. That they have more skills. Maybe they're good at this. I need your help. I mean, it's just been an excellent eye opener. So as you're bridging into student-centered learning, be creative. Some people don't think they're creative, but there's so much out there. A lot of times students come up with some of the ideas. I really like it. Sometimes things just pop in my head, but it can be a collaborative creativity, or you can borrow someone else's creativity. But just think outside the box. Try to be open to things that maybe you're not normally used to, which brings in flexibility. There's so many times where I have said this past month, this is what I think it's going to look like in the classroom. And sometimes it looks like that. Actually, we've had pretty good success this time, but sometimes it doesn't and it doesn't work. So being flexible and willing to say, well, that didn't work during C reflection has been just necessary for me during this because it's all new and I'm not exactly sure what it would look like, but we've gotten a write-up in the paper, and our public library has contributed some of the technology for me, and it's just seems to grow and seems to be something that the students, having gone home and talked to their family and been excited about, that they're really engaging in. So I'm really excited to see that. And these are the kind of things that you see when you allow student-centered learning activities into your classroom. Does anyone have any questions? As we're finishing up, I do want to just one more time reiterate that, we can teach students, but we all know that teaching them how to learn is much more beneficial to them. They can access information in so many different ways now, but also teaching them who they are as a learner is so important. Allowing them to set goals and allowing them to experience things, whether it works or not, as long as they come away with something, some idea, that can help. Or maybe if they had tried something just a little bit different, that sits. I like to show my kids that, there's not just one way. There's a lot of ways, and you as a learner can go in so many different directions. What will you come up with? So I hope you really enjoyed this presentation, and there are some additional professional learning activities, and then we'll get Michelle's question. socialstudies.com/learning, you can access the past webinars and see what's coming up, so you can learn a little bit more about StrataLogica that way. There's a self-guided course that can be for credit, StrataLogica 101. Search it in the community in StrataLogica, and then add it to your gallery. And then you can go at your own pace whenever you want. And then, of course, Pam Gothart is our organizer at the webinar today, and she is at pgothart@socialstudies.com, and she'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So, and Pam already answered Michelle's question. They don't need a login that looks like a email. So, and Stephanie, thank you so much. I'd be interested to see if anybody else has other ideas, because, things are constantly, we all learn from each other, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I hope you can take away some things from it that you can use in your classroom, especially this time of year. And it's not very often, so I hope you hear in my voice how excited I am about this and what is happening in the library with testing coming up and my yearbook deadline and all these stressors. When my classes come in, I am just beaming. I'm super excited. So thank you all. I really appreciate you being here and listening.
Melissa, thank you so much. Another wonderful session. I love the ideas that you presented to us today. It just all of them look like so much fun and look like they were very engaging. And the idea of students having this degree of choice is something that we used to see primarily with adult learners and their need for choice. And now we see it trickling down that even kindergartners appreciate having some degree of choice in their learning. So thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight. And thank all of you who attended and joined in with us this afternoon. We're so glad that you did. You'll be getting an email tomorrow with a link to today's presentation. We just encourage you to share that with your colleagues.